Hi everyone, I would like to introduce Kristina Rothe from Microsoft, who will be speaking about gesture control and motion capture in Unity and with Kinect. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello everyone, and thanks for joining my session. I am going to show you how to use the Kinect for Windows V2. That's the one that you also get with the Xbox One. With Unity, in order to do a couple of things, such as gesture control for actually interacting with a game, and also motion capturing if you just want to make your game more personal without having to spend too much money because you're on a tight budget for whichever reason. First, a couple of words about me. I am Kristina Rothe, and I am a game development evangelist with Microsoft. So essentially, I go around and do workshops, talks, tutorials, etc., and show how to use Microsoft tools with game development or games. You can find me on the internet pretty much all over the place: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Just look for Kris Rothe on Twitter. It's underscored. Facebook, it isn't. And my blog is at topistart.de, where I'll also post about events, but also the tutorials. And you can also find video recordings of the guides for how to actually implement the motion capturing things. So in case you want to, in a month or so, you say, hey, I'd like to actually record me dancing some Waikiki dance. Then you can have a look at it and you can see how it's actually implemented, and you get the links to the tools as well. So the agenda is pretty short, as is the slide deck. It's really very, very short. Most of it is going to be hands-on. First of all, I'm going to show you the SDK, the tooling, both natively as well as the Unity specific part. Then secondly, I'm going to walk you through the gesture control part, so how to actually implement Kinect gestures into games for gamers that have a Kinect. And last but not least, I show you how to do motion capturing with it, even when you do not want to make a Kinect game or a natural user interaction game, then you can still make great use of it. Right, let's get right to it. Here's the download info. The slides I've already sent to the organizers, so you can get them later. The SDK itself has this wonderfully cryptic link, which actually makes a lot of sense. It's aka.ms and then Kinect for Windows version 2 SDK. Makes lots of sense. We're good at that. We're very good at acronyms. Then the cinema mocap thing you can get at the asset store. And if you want to work on the animation files, you can do that, for example, with Blender, which I'm not going to show you because I'm really bad at working on animation files. Anyway, let's jump right into it. When you go and install the SDK for the Kinect, you don't only get the drivers and the API sets and libraries, but you also get a whole bunch of samples, which you can see here. It's called the SDK browser. And you can get various things, like there is one for face control. There's also one that you can use for 3D scanning. It's a very basic scan, but essentially what it does is you can, for example, create an object and then put it on a rotating table and use the Kinect to actually scan it and then use it in your game. There's games like, for example, Lumino City, where the entire game world has been created out of papercraft and such before. And then they've been implementing it into the game. Just imagine you created a little robot and want to have it move in the game, then you can handcraft it, 3D scan it, not necessarily with Kinect Fusion, because that's just a working example how it generally speaking works. It's very basic. There's a tool called 3D Builder, which is used for 3D printing. So everything that allows you to scan objects for 3D printing is pretty good for doing that as well. So there's that, and there's also a nice little app which is called Kinect Evolution, and that essentially shows the different functionalities of the Kinect. And I really hope that this is actually a solid wall, that I can't fall down. So you have a couple of modes of the Kinect. This is the depth view and infrared. So this image is looking the same regardless of how light or dark it is. And this setup doesn't really, oof. Let's see. There, it just, magic. Anyway, then to the right you can see the audio source, which normally tracks where audio comes from, but I think I have been traveling a bit too much with it. So normally this little button shows you if the audio source comes from the right or from the left. Yeah, something's really dodgy today. Oh well. Let's open this. And when has any one of you worked with the first Kinect, the old one with the 360? Okay, I see 3-4 hands. Has anyone played with a Kinect game on the 360? I see a few more hands. So I guess you know the sad and brutal reality, even though Project Natal was the reason I wanted to go to Microsoft. The sad reality was that when you played Kinect Sports or Adventures or so, you jumped, and 2 seconds later, the jump was displayed in the game. Here it's a bit better. So the movements are a lot less laggy, and this Kinect tracks 25 joints for up to 6 people at a frame rate of, this is really shaky, at a frame rate of about 30 frames per second. Right. Hello, cable. I think it's one of the cables that is, well, let's see. So those are the joints that can be tracked. You can start with head, neck, and go up down to the foot, and it also tracks a few hand joints, although the research department is always trying to work on improving the recognition. So now I have activated Blockman. This is fairly similar, whereas the joints thing shows you the position of the 25 joints in the room, whereas the Blockman shows you the rotation of the room. There are some limitations, like how far can a head be tracked? Not all the way around. And also, when the Kinect keeps restarting, I may have to restart the computer. But actually, when you leave the field of vision of the Kinect, things will become a bit jittery, so those are things that you have to keep in mind when recording with it. And the last thing is depth with color. And one thing that is good for is that it actually marks the player tagging. So it can actually differentiate between the different players, and you will see them in different colors. Well, the motion capturing is going to be fun later on. So those are a couple of basics for the SDK. Now let's have a look at the Unity SDK. What I've done is I have already imported a couple of things. So the project is new, but I have imported 2 things. I've imported the Kinect SDK, and I've imported the cinema mocap and a 3D model, because those would just take too long to repeatedly import. This PC is really not a pure developer laptop. And what you also get when you download the SDK is that you get 2 sample projects. One is Kinect View for Unity, and one is the green screen thing. And if you copy in the Kinect View folder, which is also compatible with Unity 4, please be aware if is anyone using Unity 4? Okay, so with Unity 4, you need the Pro engine, the Pro license, to actually use the Kinect SDK. With Unity 5, it's free. So the personal edition is fine. Let's open the scene. And this one actually looks a bit weirder than the other one. Come on, open. Let's open it. Kinect has started, so you can see me, you can see the depth view, you can see the joint man. Those are a couple of sample views of which you can use the code to implement them into your game. Now the thing is, there was a tutorial video that I was searching for when one of our Game Jam participants wanted to create a beach volleyball game with 2 players, and he wanted to use the Kinect for that. And he wanted to actually use the joint data to show them with the players on screen. And I was looking for tutorials for about a week. And the only thing I found was how to create a cube and display the color view, or well, the actual real picture as texture on the cube. So exactly what I needed, not. Did a bit more digging around and then realized, okay, I had to do it myself. But this Kinect view folder, the sample project, comes with a very handy folder scripts, which has the so-called body source manager. So the body source manager is essentially the script that handles the data that gets streamed from the Kinect, and you can use that script as a component to access it directly. So you don't actually need to write anything yourself, just use that script from the sample. And that's the reason why I'll leave the Kinect view folder in there and why I usually import the scripts folder as well. Let's start a new scene. And first, let's create an empty game object, which is going to be my Kinect controller. And I'm going to attach the script called Body Source Manager. That's the one that I get from the sample thing. So far, so good and so simple. The next thing I want to do is creating first one object with a child object that is representing a cube, for example, that I want to move around with, don't know, my hand, my foot, whatever. And then afterwards, I'm going to create a second game object and apply the same script, and you can see how the Kinect independently tracks the joints at the same time. So let's create a new script. Let's call it detect joints. Then, as you can see, my approach to developing games and structuring games is very organized. So let's call this object 1. Also, my naming conventions are really great. And let's add a cube here. I'm going to attach the detect joints script to the parent object because then I can just switch the displayed item without affecting what I've created. Now I'm opening the script in Visual Studio, and I guess the first thing I'll have to do is increase the font size once it's opened. Speaking of Visual Studio, while it's opening, since Unity 5.2 with the latest update, the Visual Studio tools are added straight away. And why is that not? Ah, there you go. So that makes it a lot easier for debugging, in case you haven't seen it yet. The first thing that I want to do, just like every normal approach, I want to be able to access the game controller, or in this case, the Kinect controller. And from there, I want to grab the body source manager. So let's add a game object for the body Kinect controller, and let's assign it straight away. So I just drag and drop on here. Then we've got that out of the way. Then we're going to create a new variable of the type body source manager, which we're going to grab from the Kinect controller. So when we're initializing, I can grab the component of the type body source manager. Now you could add an if statement to check if it's null and then warn the user about having to actually assign a body source manager. But I'll leave it for now. I'll just make sure that I have assigned one. Now the thing is, this is the only thing that you can put in the start menu. There are a couple of more assignments that we have to make, and we have to do that in the update function. And the reason for that is that the Kinect actually needs a split second, sometimes a second, to boot up. If you only add it or try to access it in the start method, then you would just get a null reference exception all the time, and you just wonder why the game doesn't work. So unfortunately, we have to do that in the update function. But here I'm going to add some if statements. So if body manager is null, I'm going to exit this method, and otherwise I can also create a new array of the type body, and I'm going to call it bodies. Oh, yeah, one thing. I was able to do a little bit because all this is Unity native. Now when I try to access Kinect-specific APIs, obviously it doesn't work if I don't tell Unity where to look. So let's add the Windows Kinect namespace. Now we need the new array of the type body. Let's call it bodies. And since we've checked that body manager isn't null, we can start assigning the bodies. Equals body manager. The method for that is pretty simple. It's called getData. It's very self-explanatory. And now we need to decide which joints to track. Now we could say that in the code, the joints are, or joint types are essentially is an enum, but we can also have the designers selected from a drop-down menu by just declaring it as a public enum. So public joint type, track joint. And if we switch back, then you can see the drop-down popping up with all the joints that you can actually track. So it goes from head, neck, spine to hand tap, thumb. So you can also track, for example, lasso gestures. You can track closed hands, open hands, just as it is. We could go for elbows, hands. I think I'll go with hand first. Let's use the left hand. All right. So now we've got the data, we need to walk through, this bodies array. So if bodies /null, return. Otherwise, var body in bodies. This becomes a bit weird, this entire naming thing, but hey. So for each body, we'll check first, is there any data on there, of course. But in this case, if there is nothing, then we'll just continue. And if there's data on it, then the second thing we're going to check is whether the data is tracked. So like I said, the Kinect can keep track of up to 6 people, but only 2 people will be tracked as active players at the same time. So if body is tracked, it's a very simple property that we can use for that. Now let's create a position variable, a temporary thing, and assign the position of that particular joint to there. So body joints, tracked joint, position. And the only thing that we need to do now is assign that position data to the game object. So that we just do by the transform component. So this game object transform position equals new vector 3 with pos x and pos y. Right, and now let's see if it works. So you can see that the cube is moving while I'm moving my left hand, but it's not doing anything while I'm moving and waving around with my right hand or with my foot or whatever. But the downside is it's not moving a lot, and this is where I originally had the typical knot in my brain. So I was like really frustrated, like, why isn't it moving so enough? Why is it just displaying in this small radius? How do I fix it? For some reason, adding a multiplier just didn't enter my brain. So let's add a multiplier. And just assign the value 10 right away. And now we can just multiply pos x and y with the multiplier. Save that. So that's all we need for the scripting part. And now I'm going to add a second game object, attach the same script, and let's just do it like without a parent object. I'm going to add a particle system, and I'm going to give it the detect joints script. Let's assign the Kinect controller, and let's say that I would like to have my right foot tracked at the same time as the left hand. So you can see the particle system starts a bit below the game screen, and right now only the cube moves, and when I move my right foot, then the particle system moves. Now, this is how you control a game object within Unity with Kinect. How to interact with a game is very simple by just adding, for example, colliders. So that's pretty straightforward. The only thing that you need to know is how to actually get the gesture data into the game, and that is very simple. Most of the code, as you can see, is really just tracking if something is null, and if it is, then just canceling the operation. And what you need is this get data, as well as getting the joint position. 2 lines of code, essentially, for getting the data. So that's how to implement gesture control. Now let's do something fun. And let's start with motion capturing. So even, like I said, if you don't want to have players interact with the game, because let's face it, not a lot of players in the wild may have a Kinect for Windows. Let's be realistic here. But, of course, it's really great for medical appliances, for very specific fields, also school classes where you sell the entire package. Then having gesture control is awesome. But even if you're not intending to create a game that is controlled with actual real motion, then you can use it as a very cheap device to record animation data. And I'm doing that with the help of a Unity plugin called Cinema Mocap that I got from the Asset Store. And I can start, it opens in a little window like this and is compatible with Kinect 1 and 2. And it essentially gives you the joint data. It tracks if all the joints are clearly visible. If not, then they'll be marked red, as you can see with my feet. And the little radar in the bottom shows you if I'm in a good distance from the Kinect. in the bottom left corner, you are able to create a little sample model to show your movements in real time. But it's a bit far away. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change the camera data a bit. So let's change that to 2 and change actually 3 maybe. Change the rotation to 180 degrees. Now you can see it a bit better, that it also tracks where I am in the room. And you can see it live with the preview. The thing is, when the Kinect can barely see your feet, then it starts to jitter a bit. This is something that the team is working on already, so don't worry about that. All right, now let's start with the recording side of things. You can record in 2 modes. One is the transform mode that will record the position and rotation of your animation, or you can record in matrix mode. Recording in matrix allows you to actually edit the animation files later on in Blender or Maya or whatever. Whereas if you just want to use it in Unity straight away, then transrod lock should be fairly sufficient. Let's record a simple wave. You can also set a delay for recording. Normally it's best if you have 2 people recording, that you don't have to keep walking back and forth and such, but have someone else pushing the buttons for you. And it's also very good to have a little bit of space. So essentially, if this couch was away, then this would be enough. Try to not have a room that is too cluttered. All right, let's turn it on, and let's record. So now it's recording, and I can record a wave. I can do this. I can do that. I can dance. Don't publish that. The only thing that you shouldn't do is you shouldn't record movements such as somersaults. So if you want to do, what's it called again, the free running thing. If you want to create a free running game, then you may have to resort to a marker suit again. Oh, that's a nice view. That's very artistic. You can also use the marker suits in combination with the Kinect. You can also combine multiple Kinects in various positions with multiple PCs. But for very basic things, for normal speed movements, this is more than sufficient. Now let's have a look at the animation data. That is going to be in the subfolder Cinema Mocap animations, and you can see the file mocap humanoid wave import settings. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to change the animation type in the rig tab to humanoid, because that's what I think I am, sort of a humanoid. And I imported a model from Mixamo where I needed to change the animation type to humanoid as well. So don't forget that. Then if you go to the animations tab, you can preview the animation. And you can also mix and match it and cut it as you want. That's actually pretty cool from the side of Unity. So scroll down and you can see that the lights barely, well, here this one matches a bit. Let's see. Okay. Awesome. Now I've got the animation file. Let's apply the change and not worry about details. And last but not least, I'm going to implement a model from, like I said, Mixamo. It's this sweet girl. Give her an animator controller that I'm just going to create, not very creatively in terms of naming. And now just apply the animation that we just recorded to a new animation state that is empty. and having that file assigned. Right. Let's see. As you can see, she is dancing very well. And the cool thing is that, like I said, the developers are constantly working on the tool and on the plugin. So you don't need to worry that it's not supported in the future. But actually, they have already told me that they're planning quite a number of improvements in terms of precision of the data. And the other thing, like I said, is you can work on the animation in Blender to make it a bit more smooth and a bit more seamless. All right, so this is essentially how you create your own animation. It's super simple, as you can see. Anyone can do it, from small child to elderly people. And it's something that you can have lots of fun with in your team, also for game jams, because as you may have noticed, it's super fast to set up. The import of the plugin doesn't really take that long either. And you don't need to write any code to implement or to import that data. So before you are looking for that very specific, very particular, very special animation for your game jam game, why not record it yourself? Unless it's free running. Anyway, questions? Yes, very far in the back.
What I haven't seen yet is when you are turning around, how's the program coping with that when you're spinning?
It's just the speed. You mean the somersault, why you shouldn't record fast movements? Or the head thing?
No, when you completely turn around with your body, do you have to stand face onto it, or can you just do a spin?
You should be able to just do a spin. Let's see. Shall we give it a try? I've never tried it. I always do waves. I'm always happy for new examples or requests. Oh, right. Let's start like this, and let's see if it actually records it properly. I hope it, no, it hasn't. Damn it. Right. That blinks again. Still on, so that should have worked. Right. Let's have a look. Animations. No, that's the wrong one. Okay, I guess it didn't capture me at all. Oh, well, it kind of did. But that is something, it's a very good point. It's something that I will chat to the cinema guys about. We also chatted about some head tracking stuff. What it can do is that it can do some side tracking, and normally it does track your joints in the depth. The solution that some people have used is using two Kinects at the same time to get a better depth view, and then mix the animation data. So, but I'll chat to the cinema developers. Yes?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. The question is about, you mentioned that Kinect can capture like hands and fingers, smaller joints, yeah?
Yeah.
So if I would like to capture, for example, the hand movement and finger movement for my model, should I capture it separately, or is it recognized within this grander recording session?
So essentially, this is tracked when you have your entire body recorded. But if you do hand recording only, there is a research and development project that actually does individual finger scanning. It's nothing official, like I said, research. But then you have to record it separately. The reason for that is being the enormous amount of data that is required to pull through. And that's, for example, also the reason why if you want to use 2 Kinects with 1 PC, you need 2 separate USB 3 controllers, not just part. Every Kinect needs their own controller because of the data. Yes?
Hi, thanks for the talk. Quick question. Are you able to track tools, like, for example, if a person holds a sword or a stick or something like that?
No, that's not a joint. You would track it via the joint, essentially. Okay. But you can scan it as an object, but it's not for tracking because it's not classed as a joint.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions?
Do you need a Windows PC to do this, or is there a way to do it on a Mac or Linux?
Windows 8.1 plus, so 8.1 or 10. So far, that is. If you want to, I'll be here for the entire day. I'll just on and off occasionally for the game lunch also. If you want to try it out or have more questions, then feel free to poke me. Or is anyone of you from Berlin by any chance? Okay, very few, very shy people. So I'm based in Berlin. If you're curious, I do have the Kinect, and we sometimes can give it as a loan for development purposes. So if you're curious, then do approach me. Let me quickly show you my contact slide again. Approach me about it, and then we can sort you out. Any other questions? Well, if not, does anyone want to give it a try and record their movements? Like special signature moves? Why is everyone so shy? Unbelievable. All right. Yeah, of course. And there he vanishes. All right, thanks for your questions. I will actually use them and probably write them up again. Follow me for the turning questions. I'll check it out and we'll post an update as soon as I know anything. And yes, thanks for your time and for sticking out with me.